morning. New school year. Congratulations. I hope you're excited. I'm glad to be here. We have this mandatory training that we have to do each year. And I think it's been a couple years at least since I've actually come and done this in person. I am truly pleased to be here. I'm excited. I get excited by a new school year. It brings different issues to us at the law firm, and what you do is so important. So how you do it, where you do it, and being able to do it in a way that's comfortable is critical. All right, can you hear me in the back? Great, thank you. So sexual and other forms of workplace harassment will not be tolerated. That's our starting point. If you take nothing else away from the presentation today, understand, harassment is not a behavior that we can accept. It's not one that belongs in the workplace. At the end of the day, this is a place where you should come, not having to hold your breath until you walk out the doors at the end of the day, but walking in knowing that you're safe and that you're going to be okay in this environment. Nobody's going to pick on you. Nobody's going to make fun of you. Nobody's going to criticize you unfairly. Nobody's going to ask you to do anything that's not related to your job that they have no right to ask of you. So conduct that may seem acceptable at one time doesn't mean it is acceptable today. We evolve as a society. We evolve as a culture. There are certain behaviors, maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, that were deemed acceptable in the workplace that are clearly not today. So we need a common understanding. That's what today's presentation is about. Let's see if we can't reach that common understanding. So workplace harassment is a problem, and we want to make sure you understand it, know how to report it, and know how to deal with it. It's a form of it's a form of discrimination. Why is that? If I'm being harassed in the workplace, then this is not a comfortable place for me to be. And if you are doing that on the basis of my sex, my race, my religion, my disability, any number of protected categories, then that's discriminatory. I'm being subjected to harassment, to a different set of standards than other people in the workplace, and it makes it hard for me to be here. Therefore, I'm being discriminated against. It includes harassment on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, perceived sex, gender expression, gender identity, and the status of being transgender. So sexual harassment is broader than just the idea of male-female. And it includes gender non-conforming individuals as well, and those who have a gender expression that's different. It's unlawful when it subjects you to inferior terms, conditions, or privileges of employment. Includes unwelcome conduct directed at an individual because of their sex. Now, when it has a purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with their work performance or creates an intimidating or hostile environment. This is what I was talking about, where you're uncomfortable coming to work because you're being treated unfairly, differently. Where it is made explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of employment. You must be female to get this job, you must be male to get this job. Submission or rejection of the conduct is used as a basis for employment decisions. We'll get to that in just a second. So it's prohibited and may lead to disciplinary action against the perpetrator. So I'm going to go back to the very first slide. Harassment will not be tolerated. Well, how do we deal with that? Well, if you're harassing somebody, you are putting your employment in jeopardy. Why? We can't have harassment in the workplace. So how do we deal with that? We have to change the behavior or we say goodbye. So understand that you put your job at risk if you engage in this kind of behavior. Now, it's not just sexual harassment, although that will be the focus of most of the slides today, but it's based on any protected category. age, race, creed, color, national origin, sexual orientation, military status, sex, disability, marital status, domestic violence victim status, gender identity, criminal history, religion. There's a broad list of categories. So a lot of the information that you're going to receive today, you could replace sex as the category with any one of these other categories as well. So quid pro quo sexual harassment. Quid pro quo, fancy Latin term, just means this for that. You give me this, and I will give you that. Go out with me, and I will consider giving you a job. Go out with me, I'll consider giving you a promotion. Go out with me, and I will consider providing you with a better work shift. Let's go out with me with provide this sexual favor. So any kind of this for that that's based on sex is quid pro quo harassment. And this occurs when somebody with authority is providing you with that choice. You do this, I'll give you that. If you don't give me this, I will give you that, which is a negative consequence. If you don't go out with me, I will demote you. I will give you a worse job shift. So it works both ways. And obviously, this is where a supervisor or somebody with supervisory authority is making the demand or the quote-unquote request. Because why is that? The only one who can visit a negative job consequence or provide you with a positive job consequence is somebody with supervisory authority. If somebody has the same job as you into a supervisory authority, they don't have the ability to change your job shift, to change the terms and conditions of your employment. So quid pro quo. Sex stereotyping. Harassing a person that does not conform to gender stereotypes. You gotta be a woman to teach kindergarten. Those little kids need nurturing in a way, they need a mom's touch, not a dad's. It's gender stereotyping. You wanna be a mechanic? You're a woman, you don't belong in the bus garage. Why not? I'm a trained mechanic, I've got great skills. So gender stereotyping is a form of harassment. Hostile environment. This is the one that we see most often. It's the one that comes to our office most often in terms of we've got a harassment problem in the workplace. It takes a lot of different forms, but basically it is unwelcome conduct based on sex, gender. Sexual or discriminatory displays or publications anywhere in the workplace. I'll provide a little more detail on that in a few more slides. Or hostile actions taken against somebody because of their sex. So, unwelcome conduct. What's it look like? Well, physical abuse. If I reach out and touch you in a way that is inappropriate, clearly sexual harassment. I come from a family of huggers. We hug each other when we see each other and greet each other. We hug each other when we're saying goodbye. We are a huggy family. Our close friends, we hug them when we see them, we hug them when we're saying goodbye. I have friends at work. I don't hug them. I don't know if it will be well received, welcome, or not. I might think I know, but I don't know for sure. And I don't want to make anybody at work uncomfortable about coming to work. So I err on the side of not touching. You might see somebody at work who's upset. You're nurturing people by nature. What's the temptation? It's a workplace. You need to be cautious. You can ask, do you need a hug? But you need to be cautious. Gestures. I've seen signs with your hands, with your arms. Baby. Jokes. So I've taken the affection out of the workplace, and now I'm going to take the humor out of the workplace. Jokes based on protected categories. So in the past, I have told you lawyer jokes because it's not a protected category. I think the one that I probably told you is, how does a lawyer sleep? First he lies on one side, then he lies on the other. So if I tell that joke at work, it's not harassment because lawyers aren't a protected category. But I've opened the door. Oh yeah, I heard one too. A lawyer, a priest, and a rabbi walk into a bar. If I'm telling a joke based on stereotypes, I may be opening the door to hear a joke back that's based on stereotypes of a protected category. So you gotta be cautious. Well, Don, are we not allowed to laugh at work? Well, come on, folks. There's a gazillion dad jokes out there. What do you call a trout in a tuxedo? Sophisticated. My wife told me I need to lose a little weight and I could use some lunges. I said, oh, that would be a step forward. We can find humor that is not based on protected categories and that is safe to tell in the workplace. Pictures. Memes, YouTube videos that put down or make fun of people based on a protected category. There is all kinds of stuff out there on the internet. There are things you will view that you might find as funny that are based on stereotypes of protected categories. You need to be cautious about what it is you share in the workplace that's coming off of the internet that you might find funny, that you might decide to send to a coworker. Comments. Generalities that lump one group together and denigrate them. All lawyers are liars. All accountants are boring. All blacks are. All Jews are. All Muslims are. You know, after 9/11, there was a lot of discrimination and harassment of folks who were Islamic. In central New York, where I come from, some teenagers burned down a Sikh temple. Well, who are the Sikhs? Are they Muslims? They're not. But they wear turbans, and so those teenagers assumed that they were. And the Sikh religion is the 5th largest in the world. It's got 2 basic tenets. Everybody is equal, and service to everybody. couldn't find two better faith principles on which to live. So, what did they do when their temple was burnt down? They met with those teenagers. They asked law enforcement, the DA, to be lenient with regard to prosecuting them. And they met with them to talk to them about what the Sikh religion is, what it isn't. And those teenagers learned something that they just didn't know. What did they do? They proceeded on assumptions and presumptions about the evils of those who worship in the Islamic faith. They were mistaken about what they were doing, but if they had burned down a mosque, it would have been every bit as wrong. Because not all Muslims are terrorists. And whenever you see a statement that is all blank are blank, you know it's a lie. It's a biased lie. What is bias? It's a personal judgment that we make, most often not based on reason. Because if we think about it, we know that it's not true. Because you take any one of those statements, all blank are blank, and you look around and you look at whatever that category is, you're going to find a gazillion exceptions to that assumption. So you know it's a lie when it starts out all blank or blank. We need to be careful about that. In fact, we need not to do it. Terms of endearment. Calling a coworker honey, sweetheart, darling. We had a summer intern this year. She's a second-year law student going into her last year. She did great work. And she's a great personality. And we've actually made a job offer to her for when she graduates next year. I went in to see her to discuss some research she was doing for me. And during the course of the conversation, I thought she ended one of her sentences back at me with "dear." I wasn't sure I heard it right. And then when I was finishing the conversation and getting ready to leave, she said, "I'll have that for you tomorrow, dear." I looked at her, I said, "I know this is because you're from the South." I said, "But there are only two people who can get away with calling me dear. It's my wife, and it's the waitress at the diner." I'm not offended because I know where it's coming from. But that's a Southern habit that you need to break, because our clients in the North here will not understand that at all. And they may take offense. So, I'm not your sweetheart, I'm your administrative assistant. I'm your coworker. So, terms of endearment. Questionable compliments, nice legs. Right, that one's pretty clear, right? That's a nice sweater. That sweater looks good. That sweater looks good on you. You make that sweater. Oh, baby. So there is a huge spectrum there in terms of giving that compliment. That's a nice sweater. Oh, baby, hot. Right in the middle here, you all started to go, right? That sweater looks good. That sweater looks good on you. In the workplace, why would we dance around the middle? What's the risk? The risk is that you offend somebody. The risk is that you make them feel uncomfortable because you are objectifying them and looking at them in a way that is sexual, not professional. So let's come back to this end of the spectrum. That's a nice sweater. how do I, as the recipient of that comment, hear it? Because that's a nice sweater, and then there's, that's a nice sweater. What am I hearing? Because harassment, to a great extent, is how does the person hearing the comment, receiving the conduct, interpret it? I would say to you and suggest that you stay away from commenting on anybody's appearance. And I will tell you this, the number one reason kids that say they are harassed in school is because of physical appearance. It's not that different in the workplace. You need to be careful, and you need to be understanding with regard to issues around physical appearance. So, the standard for harassment under federal law is that it be severe and pervasive, which has been changed to severe or pervasive. It's a pretty high standard. Not under New York law. Under New York law, if it's more than a petty slight or trivial inconvenience. New York law sets the threshold for harassment at a very low bar. It doesn't take a whole lot to step over that bar and find that you are guilty of having harassed. So when I talk to you about that spectrum with regard to compliments, I'm not kidding. It doesn't take a whole lot, again, to step over and to offend somebody with something that they consider to be more than a petty slight or a trivial inconvenience. We often think of sexual harassment of men harassing women. Men can harass men on the basis of sex. Women can harass women on the basis of sex. Women can harass men on the basis of sex. Gender non-conforming folks can be harassed by men or women, or other gender non-conforming folks, and they have the capacity to harass based on sex as well. Anybody can be a harasser based on sex or any other protected category. And so you need to understand that. The law protects employees, paid or unpaid interns, and non-employees who work in the workplace. So if while I'm here, one of you sexually harasses me, I'm protected by the law from that. And I have a legitimate complaint that I can pursue. And while I am here, should I sexually harass one of you, you have a legitimate complaint that you can bring to the attention of your employer that they have to deal with and make sure it doesn't happen again. Anyone in the workplace can be a perpetrator, coworker, supervisor, any third party. We just talked about that. Whenever and wherever employees are fulfilling their work responsibility. Where does it occur? Well, it occurs here, in this building. It occurs in other BOCES facilities. It occurs in other component districts where you might be an itinerant worker. It can occur at an office party. It can occur at a picnic that the BOCES might have for its employees. It can occur at a conference that you attend with coworkers. It can occur on site or during work hours or off work hours. If it's happening in the employment context, in the relationship of employer-employee, employee-employee, it doesn't matter where it occurs, it's problematic. So, how you behave at work is determined by the fact that this is a work environment. It's not a social environment, although we socialize while we are at work. It's a work environment. So how you relate to one another in here needs to be different than how you might relate to each other out there. So I went to past a pizzeria off Route 52 coming up here. You might be at the pizzeria with one of your co-workers on the weekend, you're hanging out. How you behave there can be different than how you behave in here. You might tell jokes that I told you can't tell at work. Is that right? I'll leave that for you to decide. But is it harassment or actionable? No. If I'm at the ballpark or the pizzeria, and you say something to me that I find offensive, I've got an option. What is that? I can get up and walk. I don't have to talk to you. I don't have to hang with you. I'm free to leave. I encounter you in the grocery store and walk the other way. Here, I have a job to do and you've got a job to do. And if that puts us in proximity to each other, I don't have a choice. So it's how we relate to each other at work is different from how we relate out there. Here, the person who is working with you is not viewed as a friend, is not viewed as a romantic interest, is not viewed as a family member, although they might be any one of those things. They're a coworker. They are entitled to be treated with respect and with care, with concern, and with the concept that what I say should not make them be uncomfortable coming in here. They should know they are safe and welcome. We get this in other environments. So I was in the doctor's office yesterday, and you know, typical thing, I walked in and I had to show them my insurance card, which they've seen 1,000 times before. I had to walk through all the COVID question protocols, and then I had to sit and wait to be called, and then after 10-15 minutes, they called me even though I was there on time. And then they weighed me, and then they took my height. And I used to wonder, why do they do this? The height never changes. It changes. I'm shrinking. But then they put me in the examining room and told me that the doctor would be with me shortly. And I laid down and took a nap because I knew that was a lie. And it was okay, because that's the protocol when you go to the doctor. Nowhere else would you put up with those kinds of weights, etc., but you know those are the rules. You get in an elevator, what do? You turn around, you look for the button you need to push it, and you stand there, and you don't talk to the people around you. Talking on the elevator. Have some fun, get in the elevator and stand facing everybody. Good morning! How are we all doing? Yeah, you'll get it. Anyway, there are rules in elevators. We know that. My wife is a recently retired, as a June 30 school librarian. School library, a little different than public library. Public library, you walk in and you don't hear a lot of noise. People are respectful of the fact that folks are reading, they're doing work, there's a set of rules that we understand. We don't get it that with regard to harassment in the workplace, there's a whole set of rules that we have to abide by. So we're starting to understand that, but that's a dynamic that for some reason seems to be difficult to understand. I think in part because, I said before, this is not a social environment. As soon as I'm done talking, you're going to lunch and you're going to socialize. And you're going to socialize with people that live in the community with you, that you interact with out there, where there's a different set of rules. And so we lose track of the fact that it's still a workplace, it's still a work environment, and the rules are different. We need to understand that. We need to really embrace it. So, workplace environment. We hear a lot of excuses when we're called in to talk to employees about harassing conduct. Well, in my day, it was okay. Guess what, folks? Your day is past. I said to you before, we evolve as a culture, we evolve with our understanding of what is and is not acceptable. If you can't evolve and you're stuck in my day, this is not going to work for you in being an employee in a current work environment. That's just the way I am, it's just the way I talk. Not acceptable. If you walk into the library and you start yelling at people, they're going to toss you. That's just the way I am. I like to yell at people. Okay, well, you got to go do that somewhere else because you can't do it here in the library. And we excuse conduct that shouldn't be excused. Well, that's just the way Jim is. If I'm Jim's supervisor and he's engaged in jokes that it should not be told in the workplace, if he's calling people names, and I turn my head, because that's just the way Jim is, that's a problem. Because as a supervisor, I've got a duty to deal with harassment when I see it. So we can't say that's the way they are. Anger. I was mad. Okay. We all get mad. People sometimes do things that make us really angry. In the workplace, we need to be able to control our anger. We need to learn how to express that in ways that are acceptable within the rules, within the bounds. We can't just go off on a rant that is something we might do against one gender and not another, that includes slurs based on a protected status. I was mad doesn't cut it as an excuse. Everybody does it. You know, from time to time we find there's a department in a particular school district or BOCES where it is everybody's telling these kinds of jokes. Everybody's being abusive to one another. It's sort of the culture of the department. Not acceptable. Not everybody does it. Might be happening in your department, but not everybody does it. Not happening in other departments. Even within your department, it's probably not true that everybody does it. Which leads me to never complained or told me to stop. They even laughed and they made offensive remarks too. You might have somebody who's doing it with everybody else, the everybody does it theory, while being offended by the very behavior that's at issue. Why would I tell attorney jokes? I'm an attorney. Well, I've heard a lot of them. People, when they find out you're an attorney, like to tell you attorney jokes. I know funny jokes about your profession. Okay, go ahead. Call me a liar. Tell me I'm better off dead at the bottom of the sea. There's a whole bunch of them, right? That's a good start. But why might I tell one? Sort of disarm. It won't bother me. I'm okay with it. Why would I joke about my race? Why might I laugh if I'm Latino and you leave a taco box on my desk every day? I'm going to come back to that issue of, at the grocery store, I can walk away. If you have a mortgage or you pay rent, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you have a car payment, please raise your hand. If you like to eat and you buy groceries, please raise your hand. If you have children, raise both of your hands. I need to work. I need this job. I can't just walk away from what's coming my way in the workplace. There's always that fear that if I complain, I'm going to be retaliated against or ostracized or whatever. You don't put anybody in that position. So there are reasons I might laugh, I might participate in the behavior at the same time. Harassment will not be tolerated in the workplace. If you violate the law, there are consequences. So I just mentioned, I might feel uncomfortable in making a complaint because I fear retaliation. Those engaged in protected activities are protected under the law of harassment. If somebody is retaliated against for having reported being harassed, or for having reported seeing somebody being harassed, or for having participated as a witness when harassment's being investigated. You experience retaliation for any of those. Those are protected, legally protected activities. That is a form of harassment, retaliation for engaging in a protected activity. Any action that alters the terms and conditions of employment because you engaged in a protected activity is a form of harassment. What could that be? Sudden change in your work schedule or your work location, a demotion, even post-employment. You don't work here anymore, but you've asked for a letter of reference. You were a great worker, your evaluations were all great, and you get a negative letter of reference in retaliation for having complained about harassment in your department. So, again, you are legally protected if you bring a claim of harassment forward in good faith, and if you participate in as a witness, as a reporter, etc. What's not a negative employment action, just to be clear? Not retaliation. That's a change in work shift or work location that is based on a bona fide workplace need, i.e. the employer needs you to be there, needs to change your shift or whatever. Supervisors. Any supervisors out there, you have special responsibilities under the law. You're required to report any harassment that you're aware of. All of you have the ability, the opportunity, would be encouraged to report harassment. Why? Because we need to protect the culture and the environment here. But supervisors, you don't have a choice. When you see it, you need to deal with it. So required to report it, and expected to model appropriate behavior. So when I talk about the rules of the workplace, the special rules that apply in the workplace, those cautionary tales that we walk through with regard to behaviors, supervisors understand that you need to, in terms of your own behavior, be real clear with regard to those issues. So, harassment has to be promptly reported to the employer. Who is your Title IX person here?
For employees, it's me. Either Bob or I. For students, it's Bob. For students, it's Bob. For employees, it's me.
Okay, so Jen DeFrank is your contact person with regard to harassment in the workplace. So supervisors can be held responsible for failing to report suspected sexual harassment and subjected to discipline for retaliating for people who report. So we had a case where a supervisor was accused of harassment. We investigated and we did not find that the supervisor engaged in harassment. Cleared the supervisor. What did the supervisor do? Harass the employee who had accused them of engaging in harassment. What is that? It's retaliation. Change their shift. Supervisor was fired for retaliation after having been cleared of the charge. What do you do if you're harassed? There's a form that if you go to Jennifer, she will share with you that you can fill out with regard to the harassment complaint. You can report it to your supervisor if it's a coworker or somebody from outside or somebody from a different department who's harassing you. Behavior doesn't need to be a violation of law in order to be a violation of company policy. So I've been talking about harassment today based on a protected category. Understand that everything we've talked about so far is based on harassment on the basis of some protected category. It's possible to harass somebody not on the basis of a protected category. Why are you harassing Don Budman? He's annoying. How is he annoying? Well, he speaks with a whiny voice and he's always complaining about this, that, and the other. Okay. You don't have to like Donald Budman, your coworker. He might annoy you with some of his behaviors. Does not give you the right to harass. So while it's unlawful to harass on the basis of a protected category, and that can land you in problems not just with your employer, but also with regard to some legal liability. Harassment in the workplace, protected category or unprotected category, is a personnel problem. And if you're harassing, it can cost you your job. So please understand that there's one rule that you need to walk away with. Thou shalt not harass. Not hard to understand? Not hard to do, really. You don't even have to be kind, although that's going to be my admonition to you. Kindness is a wonderful thing. It makes for a great place to work. You just have to not be abusive. Not that hard. Right. So your harassment policy is online, I'm assuming, and it describes how to file a complaint. Anyone who witnesses or becomes aware of potential instances should report it to a supervisor or manager. Supervisors and managers must report. And again, it's unlawful for retaliation to occur for reporting. Anyone who engages in sexual harassment is subject to remedial or disciplinary action. An investigation is commenced immediately. It's kept confidential to the extent possible. Now, if you're being harassed, one of the things that Jennifer's going to want to know is, when were you harassed? What dates, if you can remember, in what way on those dates? Who else was around that witnessed? Because in order, we want to substantiate that it's occurring. So it's not possible to guarantee 100% confidentiality, because we may need to talk to some other people with regard to what they observed and saw. Any employee may be required to cooperate as needed in an investigation. If you are called in and told, I understand you were a witness, what do you know? You need to cooperate with regard to indicating what it is that you saw and know. So there's a review of the allegations. Interim actions may be taken to protect you with regard to the workplace, depending on the nature of the alleged harassment. Relevant documents are collected, interviews are conducted. The individual who complained and the individual accused are notified of the final result of the investigation, founded or unfounded. That's for reporting in the workplace. That's for dealing with it in the workplace. There are some outside options for reporting outside of the workplace. So the State Division of Human Rights is the state agency that enforces the anti-harassment laws of the state. It's unlawful to harass in the workplace. It's not just a workplace rule. It is the law of New York State. Complaints can be filed with the Department Division of Human Rights, and you don't need a lawyer to do that. There's a form online that you can file, and www.dhr, Division of Human Rights.ny, New York.gov, government, is where you go to find that form. It's not just a violation of New York State law, it's a violation of federal law. Title VII protects you from discrimination in the workplace. So you can file a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the federal agency charged with enforcement of the anti-harassment laws of the United States. And again, you don't need a lawyer. You can go to www.eeoc.gov and file your complaints there. There is a possibility of going to court to file your complaint. But before you can do that, you have to file with the EEOC first. Now, a lot of villages, towns, counties also have anti-harassment laws or statutes. And so you may have some rights under your county, city, or town law, and you can go to those to find out. Harassment may constitute a crime. If it involves physical touching, coerced physical confinement, or coerced sexual acts, not only a violation of civil law, but a violation of criminal law. And when we get complaints about that happening in the workplace, and we do from time to time, we involve law enforcement right away. Summary. We've talked a little bit about what harassment looks like in the workplace. Remember, for it to be unlawful, it's based on a protected category. It's discrimination. It needs to be reported. Supervisors and managers have a special responsibility to report. There is additional information at www.my.gov. If you put in ny.gov or New York and harassment, it will get you to a lot of resources. Now, for the case studies that you have seen probably 8 to 10 times now, but here we go. Leon's coworker Ralph has just been through a divorce. He drops comments occasionally that he's lonely and he needs a new girlfriend. Leon and Ralph have been friendly in the past. They've had lunch together in local restaurants on many occasions. He asked for a date, dinner and a movie. She agrees to go out with him. It's a nice date, but besides, this is probably not a great idea. She thanks him for the nice time, says, I don't want to have a relationship. Thanks for the date, but let's stay co-workers. He waits 2 weeks and then starts pressuring her for more dates, and she says no. He doesn't stop. He keeps asking her to go out. When he asked her for a date the first time, is that a more than a petty issue or inconvenience? Probably not. When she says thank you but no thank you and he keeps asking, are we beyond petty? We're over the bar, right? So, when he asked her for a date, this was sexual harassment, true or false? I think if I heard you correctly, false, very good. His initial comments as not sexual harassment. Had she turned him down for the first date, he did nothing wrong by asking and making occasional comments about his personal life that are not sexually explicit. She can't complain of sexual harassment because she went on a date with him. She opened the door. You guys are great. All right. Being friendly, going on a date, even with a prior relationship with a coworker, doesn't mean that they have a right to behave like he did. She has to continue working with him. She should not feel that constant pressure of, come on, go out with me. She complains to her supervisor, and the supervisor reports the complaint as required, well done, to the person designated to receive complaints. He's questioned, he apologizes. He's told to stop. One of the things that we do when we get a report of harassment is there's an obligation on the employer to make it stop, to take steps to make it stop. So in this case, he's told, stop. Hopefully that's effective. He does. But then he starts leaving little gifts with love notes. He's not asking her for a date. He was told not to ask her for a date. But it's making her a little bit nervous, and she's worried, is this guy going to start stalking me? Now, does the leaving of the little love notes necessarily lead to the idea that this is going to be a stalker? Not necessarily. Is it irrational to think that? Not necessarily. How an individual receives information is based to a great extent on that individual. You don't know how they're going to receive it. Proceed with caution. So the subsequent behavior is not sexual harassment because he followed what he was told. Stop asking her for dates. He's just being nice because he likes her. It's not sexual harassment, true or false? She should report the behavior. She's entitled to have effective assistance in getting him to stop. Personnel did the right thing. They said stop. He didn't get the message. Because he's returned to pestering her, he could be subject to serious disciplinary action for his behavior. All right, number 2, the boss with a bad attitude. Sharon transfers to a new location with her employer. Paul's friendly, helps her get familiar with the new job. After a few days, when no one's around, he comes to her work area to chat. He talks about what he did last night. What did he do? He went to a strip club. She's shocked that he would bring up such a topic in the workplace. She doesn't say anything in response. He continues talking and says, the women in the office are so unattractive, he's got to get out to see some hot chicks. He tells her he's glad she joined the staff because unlike the others, she's easy on the eyes. Sharon feels offended and demeaned, and the idea that she and the other women in the workplace are being evaluated based on their looks by their supervisor is offensive. Because he didn't tell her she's unattractive, he's not harassing her. He's made sexually explicit statements that are derogatory and demeaning to Sharon and her female co-workers. It doesn't matter that he paid her a compliment. The discussion is still highly offensive, as it would be to most reasonable persons in her situation. By bringing up the visit to the script club, he's engaging in inappropriate workplace behavior. Simply bringing up the visit is inappropriate, especially by a supervisor, and it would be appropriate to report that conduct. A one-time comment about going to a strip club is behavior he would be told to stop. It's more than petty or trivial. Under the federal standard of severe or pervasive, it probably doesn't get over that bar. But remember, New York's bar is significantly lower and more protective. Paul should be instructed to stop making these type of comments, but it's not a serious matter. True or false? If you don't stop it, it continues to be a problem for Sharon. Perhaps for other workers in the department and in and around Paul. And if it's not addressed, the behavior will frequently escalate. And that's one of the problems with harassment that goes unreported. It starts at a lower level, and when that's not objected to, ratchets up a little bit, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. Paul's comments about female employees are a serious matter. They show contempt for women in the workplace. He's required to model appropriate behavior. Sharon should not have to continue to work for someone that she knows harbors contempt for women, nor should other employees. Management should be aware, and Paul should be disciplined and most likely removed from his position. All right, number 3, no job for a woman. Carla works as a licensed heavy equipment operator. Some of her co-workers who are male think it's fun to tease her. Watch out, here she comes, that crazy woman driver. Someone keeps putting a handmade sign on the only porta potty at the work site that says men only. Women in traditionally male jobs should expect teasing and should not take the joking comments too seriously. There is an expectation that many men have that, hey, if you're going to come work with us, you ought to anticipate it. It's a wrong assumption. There is an assumption that women walk into that workplace, which is, I know I'm going to see this, I'll have to put up with it if I want to have the job. It's understandable because it happens with fair frequency, but you shouldn't have to put up with it. Whether Carla is being harassed depends in part on her opinion of the situation. And that's what I've been saying all along, right? You don't know how those comments are going to be received. If she's not offended by them, if she doesn't find them creating a bad environment in which she wants to work, it's not a problem. But everybody who's engaging in that conduct doesn't know. And even if she laughs, and even if we've already been through that, why would somebody laugh? Want to fit in, I need this job. So, she's entitled to complain if it bothers her and have it stopped, even if she's put up with it for a while. Carla can always say when enough is enough, unwelcome and continued teasing subjects her to inferior terms, conditions, and privilege of employment. It's not petty or trivial. She can't complain because the site supervisor joins in, so she's got nowhere to go. Can't report it to the supervisor. I heard it? All right. Carla can still complain to the supervisor, who is then on notice that he's got to deal with it, got to report it up. Failure to take that complaint seriously becomes for the supervisor a second rung of harassment. So Carla can complain directly to the person designated by the employer to receive the complaints instead of going to the supervisor, or she can do it after the fact. The employer is responsible for ensuring all employees are aware of how to do that. Some of Carla's co-workers are strongly opposed to her presence in an all-male position. She's taken a man's job away from a man. What kind of a mother are you? You should be home with your kids? Someone scratched on her toolbox the word bitch. These behaviors, while rude, aren't sexual harassment because they are not sexual in nature. True or false? The behaviors are directed at her because she's a woman and appear to be intended to intimidate her and cause her to quit her job. Doesn't have to be sexual in nature. It can be on the basis of sex. And in this case, this is a man's job, not a woman's. Clear-based, sex-based bias and presumption that's false. While not sexual in nature, it is because of her sex, and it creates a hostile work environment. She complains about the jokes and other behaviors. In investigations conducted, we can't figure out who's doing it in terms of who scratched bitch on the side of her box, etc. So the supervisor says, come and tell me if you have any further problems. Someone urinates in her toolbox. There's nothing she can do because she can't prove who vandalized her toolbox. True or false? She should speak to her supervisor, the person responsible for receiving complaints. Although it's become difficult, the employer has a responsibility to support her and seek a solution. An investigation and remedial action should follow. Sometimes we don't know and we can't figure it out. There are other things the employer can do. One is a retraining of the entire department. Second one is a memo to the entire department with regard to expectations. There are other investigatory things that can happen in order to try and figure out if there is continued harassment, when and how it is happening. So, example 4, too close for comfort. Kaisha has noticed that her new boss, Sarah, leans extremely close to her when they're going over the reports. She touches her hand or shoulder frequently as they discuss work. Kaisha tries to move away from her, but she doesn't seem to get the message. She should ignore Sarah's behavior. True or false? False. If she's uncomfortable, she's got options. If she's comfortable, she can say, I'm really uncomfortable with you're getting so close to me. It would be helpful if you gave me a little more physical distance. We all got a certain boundary where we feel comfortable or uncomfortable. There are those people who walk right up to you and say, hey, how you doing? And you take a step back and you hope they get the message. And they're like, no, I mean, how are you doing? So in this case, if she's comfortable, she can say, too close for comfort. Another option is to complain to the person who receives the complaint and have them speak with Sarah. Before Keisha gets around to complaining, Sarah brushes up against her back in the conference room. She's now getting really annoyed, but puts off doing anything. Later, Sarah traps Keisha in her office after they finish discussing work. Standing between her and the door, she doesn't know what to do. She moves past, and as she does so, Sarah runs her hand over Keisha's breast. Sarah's brushing up against her in the conference room could just be inadvertent and does not give any additional grounds to complain. True or false? You guys are too good. Sarah's now engaged in a pattern of escalating behavior. As I said to you before, if you don't report it at a low level, it has the risk of escalation. Too close touching behavior is unlikely that it was inadvertent. Even before being trapped in Sarah's office, she should have reported the behavior she experienced that made her uncomfortable. Sarah's touching her breast is inappropriate, but probably not unlawful because it only happened once. Even under the federal standard of severe or pervasive, touching somebody in a private area qualifies as severe, and so understand that that kind of conduct is going to get you immediately in trouble, probably immediately moving towards termination. So, a distasteful trait, Tatiana is hoping for a promotion that she knows will become vacant. She knows her boss David will be involved in deciding who gets promoted. She says she'll be applying and is very interested. He says, we'll see. There's a lot of others interested in that position. We'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of others interested. Tone of voice, right? A week later, they travel together on state business, an overnight stay at a hotel over dinner. He says he hopes he'll be able to promote her. He's always enjoyed working with her. Some candidates look better on paper, but you're the one I want. I can pull some strings, and she says, thank you. Later, he suggests going to his hotel room for drinks and relaxation. She declines. David's behavior could be harassment, true or false? True. Look at that, I gave you the answer right there, just in case. He had made no threat that if she refused, he'd handle the promotion differently. But the offer to pull strings, followed by the request, followed by come to my hotel room for drinks and relaxation, might be considered coercive. How many of you would think that's coercive? Yeah, I'm there. If David persists in his advances, even if he never makes or carries out a threat, it could create a hostile environment, and so it needs to be addressed. After they return from the trip, she asked David if he knows when the job will be posted. Not sure, but there's still time for you to make it worth my while to pull strings. You ready for dinner? And etc. That is quid pro quo harassment at its best, right? I mean, that's incredibly clear. She really wants it, so she decides to go out with him. Almost every Friday they go out. At his insistence, they engage in sexual activity. She doesn't want to be in a relationship, but she believes he will otherwise block the promotion. She can't complain. She is voluntarily engaged in sexual activity. True or false? Because it's unwelcome, she's the target of sexual harassment. And so even if she'd refused his advances, she'd still be the target of sexual harassment. It was a quid pro quo statement, offer, whatever. And so she gets the promotion. Now she can't complain because she got it. True or false? 5. She breaks off the sexual activities. He gives her a bad evaluation. She's removed from her position and returns to her old job. Now it's too late to complain. False. The relationship was never consensual. It's still a problem. Last one. Appearances. Leonard works as a clerk typist for a large employer. He likes to wear jewelry. His attire includes earrings and necklaces. Margaret thinks it's weird that as a man he would wear jewelry and wants to be a clerical worker. She makes sarcastic comments to him about his appearance and refers to him as her office boy. Leonard hopes to develop his career in customer relations, applies for a promotional position, working the front desk where he would interact with the public. And Margaret says, if you want that job, you better look more normal. Or else wait for the promotion in the mailroom where you can hide your appearance, basically. His boss is correct to tell him wearing jewelry is inappropriate for customer service. False. By the way, if we all had the same color hair as me, I'd like to think brown, but my wife tells me gray now. If we all had this hair color, how boring would hair be? If we all had this hair color and somebody dyed a little pink into it, how outstanding would they be? One does want a little bit of color, right? So, Leonard's jewelry is only an issue because she considers it unusual for men to wear it. Therefore, her comments constitute sex stereotyping. Margaret's suspicions is that he's gay. I don't mind that, but I mind that he's being secretive. She starts asking him questions. Are you married? Do you have a partner? Do you have kids? He responds no to her questions, but it's getting a little annoying. And she starts gossiping with Leonard's co-workers about his supposed sexual orientation. You've heard the term gay lifestyle. I'm glad you're here because I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about my heterosexual lifestyle for a while. We don't talk about, it's none of your business, it's none of my business. The whole concept of gay lifestyle, heterosexual lifestyle is a misnomer. So Leonard's the recipient of harassment on the basis of sex, true or false. Leonard's harassed on the basis he's being harassed for failure to adhere to her sex stereotypes. He decides he's not going to get a fair chance, and he complains to the employer's designee. They do an investigation. They tell Margaret his jewelry is not a violation of anything in the workplace. She's got to stop harassing him on the basis and treat him fairly without regard to gender. Margaret stops her comments, but then recommends a woman be promoted to the open position. She has less experience and lacks his 2-year degree in customer relations. He's likely been the target of discrimination on the basis of retaliation. True or false? True. We don't know her reason for not recommending her, but we can't be recommending him, but we can guess, right? She's either biased or retaliating. Have any further questions? You can always see Jennifer. And I thank you for your attention today. I really hope for a wonderful